know, that's a little less wild shirt than you had on yesterday.
Well, I didn't know what to wear for Barbara Van Cleve. I thought, what do I wear for this woman? Will she want bright and light or would she want dark and somber? So I went bright and light.
I think the bright light's the best selection.
I just love color. What can I say? I mean, I probably shouldn't say that to a person who photographs in black and white, but I do love color.
Well, I have to confess,
Yeah.
apparently, I also shot a lot of color transparencies of the family and the land around where I was raised and everything. And I thought, I can't believe it because I think I really saw in black and white. Don't think so.
Do people must have asked you over the years, how come you don't shoot in color? I mean, that must have come up once or twice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I told him just what I'm going to tell you. I
Yeah.
think color is seductive. It leads you away from the essential composition and design of a black and white photograph. And those two elements were really, really important to me because I, up here in Montana, there were no classes for me to take or anything.
Right.
So I read all of Ansel Adams' books. I read everything I could get my hands on at the local library about black and white photography.
Hmm. And people like Dorothea Lange, I'm sure, had influence, and she worked in black and white as well.
Who's that?
Dorothea Lange. I know she was
Oh,
an
yes.
influence
Yeah,
of yours. In fact,
absolutely.
one of your photographs I saw in your quill book, Pure Quill, was I saw the image and it was and it was an ode to Dorothea Lange. And before I even read that title, I go, oh my God, that looks like a Lang. Has that sensibility in her face.
Yes.
And
That young woman, it was there. And I've always privately referred to that photograph of mine as homage to Dorothea Lange and her migrant mother.
and did you know that when you took the photograph, or was it once it got developed, you go, oh,
No,
there
no,
it is.
no. I was just a green kid.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, you have a little age on you. You were born in I even know when you were born, August 17th, 1935.
That's right.
Yep. Happy
You
birthday.
got it. I'm a Leo.
You are a Leo. Absolutely. So just so our folks know that are listening, this is Barbara Van Cleve, one of the finest photographers working in the West and working period. And I went through your book and seeing I mean, you have a couple books, but Pure Quilt, just looking at the imagery and the texture of the images. I think that, when we talk about black and white, for me, it's that texture that comes out, even in that very first little photo you took, when you were 15 years
Mhm.
old, right?
Yeah.
1950 is when you took that photo. Tell me about that. That was such a beautiful photograph, and you're only 15, and I know it has a lot, just I read about the story, but I'd like you to share that. I think it's an important little photograph.
Well, I was on one of my favorite things, which was a pack trip with my dad to go hunting. Uh, because for me, the hunting was not so much killing an animal, which we would eat, the
Right.
deer. We didn't have elk then. I think the Forest Service or somebody planted them on us
Yeah.
because elk are really a lowland creature, and we're in the foothills of the mountains. And anyway, it was a beautiful late afternoon in the summer and the light was just gorgeous. And we had a little creek or stream that was running through the campground. That was what we designated as our campground.
Right.
And the grass was deep and it was just perfect. So we got set up for the night, and we never used tents unless we expected or were in the middle of rainy weather. And next morning we woke up and we had over a foot of snow on our sugans, our sleeping bags. And Dad said, "Oh, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to track these deer." And I thought, okay, you bet. And then I started breakfast, just some eggs and bacon, or no, eggs and coffee,
Yeah,
always coffee.
always coffee.
Good ancestors of Norwegian blood and still that in me. Anyway, uh, we were about finished and a little breeze came up. And then it became more than a breeze and it had snow in it.
Mm.
Then it was really driving onto us. And Dad said, damn it. He said, now we got a ground blizzard. And he said, no way can we track any animals. He said, it as soon as they make a track, it'll blow in with the snow. We won't
Right.
be able to do it. So he said, we might as well pack up and go home for now.
Mhm.
So I was gathering things together. And then I thought, oh God, I said, Dad, wait a minute. I've got to get a photograph. And he said, okay, be quick about it. Just get a wiggle on and do it. So I got my Brownie Box Junior
Yeah.
camera, which was hanging on my saddle horn, got it off, and ran over to where I had seen the scene that I wanted. And it was the pack horses and saddle horse, my saddle horse, and then the snow kind of blowing the willows beyond on the other side. And of course, blowing the horses' tails.
Mm.
And I thought, I want to capture this. So I went back with my Brownie box camera and I composed the image. Now, mind you, today we go click, click, click,
Right.
or many people do. I didn't because I had to pay to have it
Sure.
developed in
Absolutely.
town. And I was just a ranch kid. We didn't get an allowance, not on the ranch. You didn't. You get it if you worked out a deal with your dad
Yeah.
to get paid for something. And I had worked out a deal with him. So I had a little money to spend on the developing. But it was ingrained in me. I was a one-shot gal.
And so,
Just get that one shot. And
yep.
today I think, oh gosh, I could have gotten some other angles.
Yeah. So you took one
Hindsight is
shot.
always the best vision, huh?
I said, so you
What?
took one shot with that and you're
That's right.
at 15.
So
And
that's all I had.
it's interesting to think about it because you still sell that print at 15. So that's almost 80 years of being a photographer. Long time, long time. That might be a
It
record.
was a passion for me.
Had to have been. And did you know it when you got that camera at 11 that this opened a new world for you, that this was something different that you hadn't experienced before?
I've never had an experience before of this. And I really think that I had a sense that this was going to open some doors for me to a new world
Hmm.
where I could capture this life that I loved so
Hmm.
much.
Did you start seeing those moments in your life of work and, around the ranch as imagery and going, that's a photo, that's a photo, that's a photo. I bet you did,
Yeah,
didn't
but I didn't have them quite as often as you were mentioning them.
you? Yeah. But
No, I didn't have them as often, but yes, I did have them.
I would
And
think,
they came more often as I got older and had more control over the camera and
yeah,
how to use it creatively.
yes. Because even at 15, you're trying to get the heck out of there. You got a ground blizzard going on. It's cold. Your dad wants to go, but yet you stop and say, I got to get a photo. It's kind of ingrained in there somewhere for sure. I mean, you were meant to be a photographer, obviously,
Well, I think so.
after this
I
many.
really think so.
Huh?
And I think my dad sensed it
He must have.
because he didn't keep on pushing me to get on the horse. Let's get out of here. It's chilly
Yeah,
or colder than a brass monkey's tail in the Klondike,
yeah,
as
I'm
he was
sure.
fond of
And
saying.
as a and I grew up in ranch country in eastern New Mexico, so I understand, a sense
Oh,
of what your father was probably like. He's probably a
yeah.
man who you're not going to waste time. There's a lot of things you got to do on a ranch. I don't have to tell you that. But, for him to even waste a minute when it's cold and the wind's blowing and it's a blizzard, plus he's got his daughter there, and there are safety issues as well, just of a big blizzard coming in. Yet he somehow said, go ahead, but make it quick.
That's right. Get a wiggle on,
Get a
girl.
wiggle on it, girl. Tell me a little bit about your dad. His name was Spike. That's right. Spike was what he was
Yep.
called. I get this lovely sense of love that and admiration that you have for your father when I read or listen to anything I've seen on you. Can you talk a little bit about that? He seemed to be a very important, pillar in your life.
Oh, he was. He was. Uh, Dad had gone to prep school and then he'd gone to Harvard.
Wow.
But he quit Harvard because uh, he heard that there was a young man back here in Montana who was courting the woman that he had started dating.
Oh.
And he thought he better get a wiggle on and get back here and get married to her pretty darn quick. So quit college, came back here, courted like crazy. And of course, my mother caved in.
Yeah.
And but dad had a great sense of humor. You could, she of course recognized that.
Huh?
And so I can stand to live with this man with this kind of humor.
Yeah, it's important. Humor is very important.
Yeah.
It really is. And was your mom, she was how many? I know you're fourth generation Montanan, but what was her background? Was she from a ranching family
Well,
as
she
well?
was born and raised in a little town north of us called Harlowton.
Yeah.
And her father was Ingvald Lauritz Knutsen. He was a full-blooded Norwegian.
Hmm.
And her mother was a very interesting woman. She, after he died quite young, she had three girls to raise
Hmm.
in the little bitty town of Harlowton. So she studied law by mail, the LaSalle
Wow.
School of Law, and she got her degree and could then practice law,
Wow. And
which
that's
she did.
really and that's really early on. What was that time frame? Like 1910 or something?
Well,
Your
let's
mother's
see.
mother, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that probably is pretty right. Now, I'm not a mathematician, and math in the head is not something I do well.
Uh-huh. But for her to be a lawyer, your mother's mother, at that age, at that time, was actually pretty remarkable.
Yep.
I mean, they just,
Well, I come from a group of remarkable women, I think. And we're going to do a documentary. They're
right,
finishing one, just finished on me, my photography and my family's history in the settling of the Montana West, or Montana Territory.
right.
And then we're going to start on one I did, the black and white photographs of Western ranch women. Well, Western means Rocky Mountains,
Right.
far as I'm concerned.
And that's going to be a documentary on you and the images you took of the Rocky Mountain women of the West.
That's right.
Oh,
Ranch women.
yeah.
No raising of sheep or goats or anything like that. It's got to be pure quail raising cattle.
Though I,
Oh, you can have some horses there for
right.
sure.
So it's interesting because Big Timber was known for its sheep at one time, right? In the
Oh,
1895, it was one of the biggest sheep producers around, right?
yeah. But I think a lot of big ranches were built originally on sheep. You could shear your sheep twice. So
Yeah,
you had that kind of income. But when they made enough money, then they shifted to cattle. And the other thing was nobody was bragging about how sheep built this place.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think
They
that's
didn't want to admit it.
right. And I think that kind of runs through all ranching communities. Even where I grew up in eastern New Mexico, it was about cattle. And there was a lot of people did sheep, but they didn't talk about that. And I don't know what that is, but you know it too, right? I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
it's and I don't, do you know what that is? Why is that? I mean, it's almost like it's almost a
Well,
macho thing kind of a deal.
it's kind of like discrimination of all types.
Yeah,
Sheep were small, dirty because the hide, the hair, the wool picked
right.
up so much dirt and it was greasy or oily.
Yeah,
And I just think there was that kind of discrimination
yeah,
about sheep.
yeah.
Dirty little things, but you could get a lot of money from
Yeah, yeah.
them.
And as you said, they all did a little bit of that probably in the
Yeah.
beginning to get going because it was easier, cheaper, and
My granddad had 3,000 head of sheep,
yeah. Well, that really was
400, 500 head of cattle,
yeah.
300 head of horses,
Wow.
because he loved horses. And the army in the various, uh, what do you call them?
Cavalry, army, and things like that. Yeah.
Well, they had stallions that were thoroughbred stallions. They were wonderful horses. And they made them available to everybody who was ranching at a very reasonable price.
Hmm.
So my granddad built up quite a herd of part thoroughbred horses. And
Yeah.
then my dad got into quarter horses. He went down to Texas and he bought a Hancock, a McHugh, and a Wagoner mare, each
Mhm.
mare, and then something else he got. And so we ended up breeding those mares for as long as we could to the Army's thoroughbred stallions.
Hmm.
So we had really good horses, and you had to mind your manners to avoid being bucked off, too. No putting your jacket on, holding the reins in your teeth, or doing something foolish like that, because you bucked off real quick.
Well, and you started riding horses at like three, right? Three, you were about three when they got you on a horse.
Yes, yes, that's right.
And it's you clearly have an affinity for not only the image of horses, which throughout a lot of your photographs, but the animal itself. You obviously, I mean, you do your photographs primarily or have in the past, right, from the back of a horse.
It's the best place. I'm short and slow, and
Yeah.
they were tall and fast. So I thought, this is a match made in heaven. But to tell you the truth, I didn't have friends as such on the ranch. Horses were my best friends. And I loved those animals, and I love them even today. Just remarkable animals. Honest, true, faithful. Yeah, they don't lie to you.
Yeah.
You can see it in their ears and their eyes when they're thinking about getting rid of you.
Yeah. You can read them and they can read
Yeah,
you. Yes. Yeah. And I have a
you
feeling.
know about that.
Yeah. I think that's all animals, honestly. A good dog is the same way.
Yeah.
They can smell it, they can feel it when you're upset or have a problem and come over and put their nuzzle on you and that kind of thing. And horses
Yeah.
no different. And I have a feeling if you're growing up as a creative person in an isolated area that and friends are hard to come by, you're probably a little bit like me. I'm an introvert, and you probably are as well, is my guess, even though you're very gregarious when you talk and things. But I have a feeling you'd rather be in a small crowd than a big crowd. Now, is
Oh, yes,
that right? Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I would think so.
You've got it.
And I can see why horses would be such a wonderful companion, and they make just beautiful imagery as well, which is just throughout your photography. I mean, how did you do that one photo with the horses and the lightning coming down
Oh,
behind them? That's to me is mind-boggling, that photo.
is this true confession time?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that is two negatives.
Okay, I wonder because I think
The light I have tried for years. That was the same place where we moved our horses out in the fall to the winter pasture, and there was that hill. And oftentimes, not always, but occasionally, there'd be a great lightning storm over there on the mountains in the distance. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I need to get that.
Yeah,
Well, the horses were over the hill when the lightning decided to strike,
right.
or the horses were just getting up to the top of the hill when the storm came. And so I thought, I'm just sick and tired of waiting around here. So I had a shot of lightning because I'm fascinated by this stuff, but not enough to ride a
Into
steel shod horse
it.
on a hill.
Uh-huh.
So I could be a lightning conductor. No, no, I wasn't.
Right.
I was interested in photographing it,
Yeah.
but I hated to ride in lightning. My granddad, fearless, but
Wow.
I didn't get that kind of fearlessness.
Yeah. Me neither, by the way. Yeah. I'm definitely stay away from lightning. I've had too many close calls, and
Yeah.
you have one or two of those in the open plains in Montana. You're the tallest thing on a horse for sure.
Oh boy, absolute truth. And my granddad was struck twice by lightning.
Wow.
Once it killed a horse he was riding, didn't hurt him though.
Wow.
And then another time it knocked both of the horses down. He was leading one and riding one, knocked them both down, and temporarily they were unconscious for a moment or two. He was not hurt. And
And
I thought, Scrumper, I'm not gonna tempt fate.
no. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you are, especially in that area. But he was not afraid of lightning, even though
No, he wasn't. he wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah.
Even there's a story that he was there was a guy who was stealing water. You know, that's a sin beyond all sins
Correct. Yeah.
out west.
Yeah.
This guy was stealing water, and my granddad rode over there. He had a shovel with him, and he just hobbled his horse, got off, hobbled his horse, and went to changing the water back to his ditch where it belonged. And this guy rode up and said, "Damn you, Paul, I ought to kill you right here." And my granddad looked at him. The guy was pointing a rifle at him. And my granddad looked up and he said, "Well, if you're going to do it, you better do it." And this guy just sat there a little bit longer, turned around, put his rifle back in the scabbard, and rode away.
Yeah. There's not much you can say to a man like that who's willing to die
Ooh.
for his water. You know,
Right.
yeah, he recognized that immediately and was like, no, he's calling my bluff. And if I'm not careful,
That's right.
he's gonna take me out.
Oh, that takes guts
Yeah.
to
Commitment,
call
real
somebody's
commitment.
bluff.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. He's committed to the land, to his water, and that has come down to you because
Right.
you feel exactly the same way. I think I'm putting words in your mouth, but it feels that way to me.
Yeah, well, I did.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the same kind of courage that my granddad had. He was remarkable.
I would disagree. Look at you being a woman photographer of early, ranch women, of, being in the rodeo, taking, images of, right there, almost getting whacked at least once. I mean, that takes some serious courage, if you ask me, to be a forerunner in a field where I'm sure many times you were told, well, you're just a girl or something to that effect, or we don't need this individual in our gallery. We've got a bunch of guys already doing that. Am I wrong or am I not?
Well, let me clarify for you.
Yeah.
The guys in the rodeo, the announcer, and then the guys who were timers and helpers there, they never made fun of me. They knew that I'd take them on if they did. And they knew my dad would be there to help me if necessary. So they were respectful.
Yeah.
It was when I got to galleries,
Yeah.
and that really just ticked me off, is the polite way to put it,
Yeah.
because I thought, my God, what does a guy from New York City know about rodeo or ranch life? Darned little, and
Yeah.
hasn't been out there, hasn't roped anything, hasn't. Well, I didn't ride bucking horses, but I did ride calves and steers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew what it was like. And it just irritated me beyond words to have somebody say, well, you your photography isn't as good of rodeo as what so and so has from New York City. And I said, okay, why doesn't he come out here, go into the arena the way I do, and photograph?
Yeah.
Let's see how we can do it. Well,
Exactly.
nobody took me up on the offer.
No. And I would have been one of them too. I wouldn't have taken it up either. It's did you know Louise Serpa at all?
Yes, I did know Louise.
Yeah, she was just I knew her for a very long time. I really loved her, admired her. And
Yeah,
she was, she wasn't afraid of anybody either. I get a sense of what, I knew her well, and just meeting you in
yeah.
a short period of time, I see correlations there very much.
Well,
Fighting.
she was quite remarkable. I mean, she was a city girl, a
Yeah.
debutante,
Yeah, she
uh,
was.
but She came out west,
Yeah.
married Westerners, and she really became a part of that rodeo scene.
Yeah.
Never once did she question it.
No, she wasn't afraid. She was not
No,
afraid of anything. You know,
no.
I saw her just a few days before she passed, and she was in her main room of her house drinking tequila, and 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 I had an IV in as well. And I said, Louisa, how are you doing? You look great. She goes, this is the best day of my life. And she meant it. And I thought, well, that's my hero right there. I want to have that kind of attitude if possible. She's probably 88 or so. She was up there, but she was the debutante of the ball again. Everybody was around saying hi, and and she was drinking tequila, and you know, uh,
With an IV and
with an
oh
IV.
my God.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's just remarkable
She
person.
was quite a gal
Yeah.
and quite a photographer.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And I think you're, you know, every bit of what she was. And, for me, it's a pleasure to have your photographs. We have them hanging actually in our museum. We have one part where people can buy stuff, but, it's hanging across the way. I've got a moonrise over Hernandez. It's not far from, your painting, your photographs. And they do feel almost like paintings in a lot of ways to me when I look at them, just the composition and the energy that you feel with them, it's and some of the ones where the stars coming down, that one, oh my God, that's just a great photograph. Now, just a little backing up about your history. So
Well, I just want to say
yeah,
thank you. Thank
well,
you.
yeah, no, I mean, it's an honor to have them there. It really is an honor. And just like it's an honor to get to talk to you, it's just one more peg that I go, yeah, that's a highlight. Today's a highlight for me. It really is. You don't know I know the photographs, I know the story, but that's not this story. And this is the story that I want people to be able to get to know and hear just a little bit. And when you left Montana, you went first to Nebraska for school, right? That was your undergraduate in fine arts.
Yeah, yeah. Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha, that's
And I
right.
went to a Catholic woman's college because, well,
Uh,
because my grandmother, Van Cleve, had gone there when she was young. And I did have a full ride to Wellesley.
yeah, I saw that.
And she wouldn't let me. They wouldn't. The family, banded
Right.
together. It's better if you go to a Catholic woman's college or girls' school. So I did.
Yeah. You really just almost didn't have a choice, even though Wellesley is such an incredible school. And how did you get that full scholarship to Wellesley? Was that through what you were doing in photography?
No, I think it was because I was a ranch girl and I did prepare some written materials for them.
Yeah,
And I think they thought, ooh, this girl has some potential.
they were right, clearly.
Yeah, wasn't necessarily in writing, although I got a master's in Victorian poetry. And
Yes.
somebody said to me, Victorian poetry? What are you doing with poetry? And I said, have you forgotten words make pictures?
Yeah. In our minds, you can't read something without seeing it in your mind's eye, and it comes through
Right.
words. That's exactly right.
I,
And you got a
I
master's.
didn't have much argument with them after that.
Yeah. And you got a master's at Northwestern, right? In Chicago.
Right,
Yeah. And that
right.
was also, and that was in English, right?
Yes.
in the Victorian poetry.
Victorian poetry,
Victorian poetry.
specifically. I had most wonderful professor, Dr. Frederick Faverty, little man,
Yeah.
impeccably dressed for every class.
Uh-huh.
And the man who taught American Lit was a slob. He had egg on his eye and other bits of food
Yeah.
there. He never could be. I just wondered if he ever bathed,
He may not have. And you
but
and
I never asked either.
did you feel at all like an outsider when you're in Chicago as a ranch girl?
Well, I was so intrigued by the museums, the symphony,
Yes.
the opera, all of those things. I never felt ostracized ever. And I never felt that I was handicapped by being a ranch girl. I just thought, oh boy, look at all this to see and do and hear and learn about.
Mm. Did
And
you?
then,
Mhm.
excuse me, when I was in college, the family thought she's not going to come back to college again if we let her come home during
Yeah, they're probably worried about it.
winter break.
Yeah.
So I went to stay with my mother's mother, the lawyer, went to stay with her in Washington, D.C. Well, she would drop me off at the Smithsonian,
Oh, wow.
and and I'd spend all day there. Then she'd pick me up. We would go to theater in the round, or we would go out to someplace, listen to the symphony. You know, it was just wonderful. I was exposed to so much, and I was willing to absorb and
Mm.
learn everything I could about it. Not that I'm a goody two shoes, because I wasn't. I can tell you that too. I was just, I was just like a blank piece of paper
Yeah,
waiting to be written upon.
I bet. I mean, I know coming, I mean, your town was, I had 10,000 in my town, and you probably had 500 people in that big tender area, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it was really small.
closer to what, yeah, we had around 1,800.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And it's pretty much stayed the same.
yeah, that's a
Although I
good,
better not say that. We don't want to be overwhelmed.
yeah, exactly. So, having that, I understand what that's like because I remember going to New York for the very first time and going and seeing art. That was really the first time I ever really saw art and being like, well, what's this? And where's this been my whole life? And so I know that feeling that you must have had. And when you were looking and absorbing this on your blank page, was there areas of the arts that you go, yeah, I'm really gravitate to that? Was it photography at that time, or was it other things, or just everything?
Well, I did have a teacher in college who was teaching us humanities. And so in the humanities class, she pointed out the work of certain artists, and she would say, now, in this case, he is drawing your eye to the most important part of the work. If you will just follow how he is controlling your eye. And she really made it fascinating.
Mm,
And I I took it to heart.
mm,
I mean, I really learned so much from this one class, not taught by a nun, but taught by a layperson
mm,
who got her degree from the University of Chicago,
mm,
her PhD.
mm. Yeah, teachers can do that. People can do that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling your mother's mother in DC was instrumental in kind of your path of where you ended up. I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels that way.
Well, I think so, only it wasn't photography, it was just art.
Yes, yes,
That was the important thing. I
yes.
got into photography because I couldn't draw and I couldn't paint. I could draw a horse head, but
Yeah.
that's all. So I thought that isn't good enough, you know.
Did you know at that early time that you somehow you had to be in the creative field of something or wanted to shoot for that? I mean, poetry is pretty creative too to get your master's in, right?
Oh, yes. And I wrote poems,
I
you
bet.
know, for our little grade school, little one house, one room school.
Yeah.
God, I don't recall wanting to be in a creative field, but I do remember being so intrigued by certain writers, certain poets, um, people who created an image for me.
Mm,
I've always been very visual.
yeah, of course. I mean, that makes total sense too, being a
Yeah,
photographer. Yeah, you see everything in that way.
yeah,
And so you finish your degree, your master's, and then you start teaching school. Is that correct?
yes,
And you,
because
yeah, I get it.
mother and dad had said, listen, kiddo, you are not going to be able to support yourself with photography.
Yeah.
Women just can't support themselves with photography. You're going to have to do something else. Well, my dad, we had a very formal business of meals at the ranch. And after the meal was finished, did we leave the table? Oh, no, 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 no. You had to talk about what you learned in school that day
Mm,
or what the teacher was going to move on to something else. So I was so used to him communicating with us, trying to draw things out of us, but also trying to freshen our memory of certain things we learned in school because he had the ability to recite poems and to recite texts that people wrote that
mm,
he admired. And so, kind of naturally, I just fell into teaching. Well, I loved it. It was a case of sharing what I knew with students.
mm.
And that meant so much to me. I have to tell you, not too many years ago, uh, a gal called me and gave me her name, said what her maiden name was. And I said, where'd you go to school? And she said, well, Lake Forest. And I thought, my God, I taught in Lake Forest at a Catholic school,
Uh-huh.
fifth grade. And she said, I said, were you one of the students? And she said, absolutely. And she said, we loved you because you wouldn't let the nuns run over you. And I thought, okie doke.
Uh-huh.
I guess I got into the right field there also.
Yes, you did. And the fact they can remember you from fifth grade, not everybody remembers their fifth grade teacher. I
That's a
remember
long time
that's a
ago.
very long time ago for
Yeah,
anybody. And so you love that. You were good at it, obviously,
yeah.
but there were other things pulling you, right? I mean, how long did you teach? And then what made you go, I'm going to do something else? Because you had your own business, which was highly successful that you opened in 1969, if I remember
Right.
correctly. And so something along the way you said, okay, I'm good at this. I like it, but there's something else for me.
Yes. I had started a stock photo agency because I'd worked for somebody in Chicago, uh, and he had a stock photo agency. So I learned how to do that. And I thought, okie doke, I know a lot of photographers here. And so I'm going to do this too.
Yeah.
So I started a stock photo agency and then got people working for me. It was okay. But I still was pining to do my own photography.
Mm.
And the art teacher at the college where I was at that time, uh, he just kind of pulled back at some point and he had a big show in Chicago. And I thought, well, doggone it, I've got to do that too. And so I thought, gonna have to just leave the college and gonna have to get out on my own.
Mm.
So that's what I did. I sold my stock photo agency to one of the people who worked for me.
Hmm.
And then I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where I know everybody who's a photographer went to. And I
True.
thought, I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta see if my work is really good, if it really will stand up to what other people have done.
Yes. And that's 1980,
That's
and
right.
you're 45 years old, and
Yeah,
it's
old enough to know better.
or old enough to understand that
That
time was going. You had done all these things and you were good at it, but wasn't your dream. And when that guy got that gallery deal, that was like, damn it, I should be able to do that too. Am I right? I mean, it seems that.
that's right. Absolutely, you're right. And I thought, I know I could do it because my dad always said, you can be anything you want to be, sis. You just have to work.
Yeah.
And work, I thrive on work.
Yeah. You're a ranch girl.
And I just loved it. Anything I wanted, oh boy, I just kind of lower my head and push into the harness and go ahead. No matter how hard it was, I'd learn and thought, well, I can't do that again. So I would go off on another tack. But I pushed ahead always.
Yeah.
And oh boy, here we go again with those New York photographers. And there were plenty of them kind of circling around in Santa Fe. And I thought, but the most wonderful part is that Santa Fe had a lot of New Englanders who had moved there. And let me tell you, those New Englanders are a piece of work. I think they are wonderful people. Tough, straightforward.
Oh,
Boy,
yeah.
don't ask them a question you don't want to hear the real truth about. They're just incredible people. And I made a lot of friends there and met people that I had met on the guest ranch part of our operation
Yes.
because, you know, we didn't sell our oats, we fed them to the horses. It was a very hard thing to sell a horse. And my dad hated to do it, but he'd do it before they got old enough for him to fall in love with them.
Yeah.
It was the guest ranching was another crop,
Yeah.
but we were lucky. The people we got were, for the most part, old money, New Englanders, great people.
Yeah.
You cannot say a bad thing about New Englanders to me without a fight.
Well, they help feed your family. and they help
Yeah.
keep the ranch in the family, which you were able to do for a very long time,
Yep.
which is hard because that's a four generation Montana lifestyle for you guys
Yep.
before, nine.
Well,
Yep.
my nephews are carrying on, fifth generation, and
Wow.
grandnephew, sixth
Wow.
generation.
That's amazing. That's such an important thing. Yeah. And so you go to Santa Fe, you're 45, and how do you approach it? Because you're taking photos, you know what you want to do, you have this vision, you're not afraid to work, but you still have to get somebody to believe in your work. And that took a few years to get there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That did. I had taken work. I discovered very soon that people loved the great big ones. And the
Yeah.
place where I bought my paper and stuff in Santa Fe, one day the guy said, "Hey, Barb, I've got some outdated paper. You can just have it and play with it and see what you want." And oh my gosh, only the first foot was exposed. After that, I had a wonderful roll, 100 feet of this paper that still was good. So I made prints and I had to turn my projector down on the floor and I marked things out where I would paste the paper and make sure it was all flat and all of that. Well, people loved the great big prints.
Yes.
So I went down to the Andrew Smith Gallery, which was in Albuquerque at that
Right.
time. And it was a photographic gallery.
Hmm.
And that's what I wanted. So I went in. Young man came out who was running it for Andy. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. We already have a ranch photographer, Jay Dussard." Well, I knew about Jay very well. And I said, "Well, why don't you just keep this and see?" And he said, "No, we know we're fine." Just then, a young woman came out, Liz Kay, to whom I'll always be grateful because she said, "Let's see what you've got there, Barbara." And I showed her these big prints. I framed them. They were 38 by 48.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, "I'd like to keep a couple of these and see what we get." Well, that was the beginning of my career in the New Mexico area. And, I got a lucky break. I got lucky again. And that was wonderful for me because other people had said in Santa Fe, "Oh no, no, we're not interested in ranch work, ranch photographs." And I thought, well, okay, guys, it's going to cost you a lot more though when you finally wake up.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I was just thinking this to myself, and I just continued pushing on. I belonged to a couple of groups, Santa Fe Photographic Group, and I would go to all of our meetings. We drink wine, eat hors d'oeuvres, and talk photographic art,
Right.
which was wonderful. And I always asked questions, and I learned a lot.
Like your
And
dad, just like
yep,
your dad. Mhm.
and that's it. And I just, I had a wonderful time and I soaked up everything I could.
Yeah.
And I met wonderful people. Beaumont Newhall was there. Paul Caponegro was there. And I'm sure you know those photographic greats,
Yeah.
And then there was one Bernard Plousseau. it just blew me away. He never developed a role. He just made the photographs.
Yeah.
And he used pretty much a 35 millimeter camera. And I was fascinated by this. And I thought, how do you do this? Then I started studying his photographs and I figured out, I got it. You know, something is worth a lot. Little things are worth a lot. And he had a picture that blew me away. It was a very simple one. It was made in Mexico, and it's in a downpour of a rainstorm, and you can see the wind blowing the rain. And there's this rider kind of tucked under the eaves of
Mhm.
oh, an adobe building.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it. Less is more.
Yeah. And the story's there. You don't even have to
Yeah.
think about it. It's just there.
It's there right in front of you.
Yeah. So many great artists, I think, come to that realization that less is more. It was Maynard Dixon came to that realization too, about probably starting about in the 1930s, that you just started to, you know, edit. You get rid of, you don't need everything in the kitchen sink. I see so many artists that when they're first starting out, they have a rainbow and birds and, everything, one more little thing will make it better. And reality is they need to get rid of two-thirds of it and just show the land.
Yeah. I listened to your podcast on Maynard Dixon because I have loved his work for years, but I did not know everything about him.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by it. And it just made me wish I could draw or paint. I just thought, how could I be born with so little talent? And then I thought, well, I found something that would help me
Yes.
get where I wanted to get as a professional photographer, but
Well,
not professional shooting models and that kind of stuff.
right. Well, you're an artist. That's why. I mean, and in my in my opinion, you found your journey. That was the road you were supposed to take, is exactly. And if you had gone to painting or drawing, that wasn't your road. It clearly wasn't. I mean, it was from 15 years old, it wasn't your road. Your road was, being an observer, being true to
Right.
who you are as a Westerner and a Montana individual and a fourth generation rancher. You were following that journey, which was laid out for you. You just had to believe in it. And it took a while to get there. I mean, you're 45 before you try to break into it, and you've been working at it a long time.
But that's okay. I learned a lot on the way.
Yeah, of
And that
course you did.
was so important.